Great. Thank you very much. Fantastic introduction, and thank you to Gordon for setting up this visit of mine. I had a fantastic time. Absolutely love Croatia. Love particularly this part of Croatia is fascinating, particularly from a nutrition point of view. I've learned lots. Now, what I want to do in a very short space of time is just take you through my thinking very rapidly in the last few years and how I've changed my views on nutrition and genetics, etc. So I started, as Gordon said, 30 years ago looking at twins. So I was originally a rheumatologist and looking at osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, but I started looking at twins. I thought this would be a fantastic way to study nature and nurture of many things, and it was a dream for a scientist to have this cohort, which was the largest in the UK, and now has 16,000 twins in it, which is still going. And as I was going through that, I was getting more and more interested in not only what things were genetic, because most things had a genetic component, but I was more and more interested in identical twins who were different. And of all the things we were noticing, it was actually that aging was one of the least genetic traits. So we found very strong correlations for things that you can measure, like the lens in your eye had a 90% heritable effect. Things you could measure very precisely were extremely heritable. But when you got to what age you died, or your biological clocks, or your telomere length, or these other aspects, then there was very little genetic components. It was always a great interest to me why that you'd have this disparity between some of these very clear phenotypes and these other ones like longevity. So this was in my mind really trying to explain why I saw so many identical twins where one was depressed, one was happy, one was obese, the other one was underweight, while one was religious, the other one was atheist, one had autoimmune disease, the other one didn't. You know, these were genetic clones, and they lived all their first 18 years in identical conditions. So I was looking for that little thing that was different between them, and that really got me into things like epigenetics to try and see if that was the answer. But it wasn't, and I was looking for other things to do at when, at the same time, back in about 2011, I was ski touring in Austria, on the Austrian-Italian border near Bormio, and we'd been climbing all week, and this was at 3,000 meters. I got to the top, felt unwell, blurriness was falling down, got to the bottom, found I had double vision, and I'd had a mini stroke. So I'd had a small occlusion in the vessel of my eye, left me with double vision for 3 months, and a real health scare, because it could have been brain tumor, could have been multiple sclerosis, many other things. And my blood pressure also shot up for reasons that shouldn't happen, but did. And so there was I suddenly thought I was really healthy, suddenly taking all these tablets, having these investigations. So I started to think much more about nutrition and obesity from a personal level rather than an epidemiological level. So it was for selfish reasons. I went and said, I've been studying obesity genes, I've been studying aging at a population level, but I don't really know what to suggest at an individual level. So I said, well, let's see what the literature shows, what's out there on the internet. And basically, what I saw was calories are crucial, counting calories is the ways to lose weight, all calories are equal, avoid high-fat foods, pick low-fat foods instead, eat starchy foods, starchy carbohydrates. Never skip a meal. Always eat regularly throughout the day. You graze, you don't gorge. Eating little and often is really important. And, of course, exercise is absolutely key to weight loss. And one diet fits all, and every government sets that diet out for people and expects them to follow it, and they'll be healthy. And, of course, all this, I learned fairly quickly, was complete rubbish. There's no evidence to back up any of this, and yet even 10 years on, this is still the mainstay of advice in most countries. Modified a little bit of it, but basically it's still that same advice, and that's why our supermarkets are full of calorie labels, low-fat foods, starchy foods, giving people high-protein snacks, so you can't go an hour without eating, otherwise that's dangerous. That's why we've been told we must have breakfast, because it's dangerous if you don't. All these things have added up. And of course, they are all complete rubbish. So there was me. I was a doctor. This is 2011. I was looking at my diet. I was done epidemiology. I thought I was a reasonably well-informed doctor. Eating in the hospital every day. My breakfast might be muesli with low-fat milk, some orange juice, and then at lunch in the hospital I would have a brown sandwich with tuna and sweet corn, and I thought this was healthy. You know, I'm Mr. Healthy. What can possibly be wrong? And it was only when I started putting things like sugar monitors on me, I realized that basically I was just eating sugar and getting these massive sugar spikes, and probably this had contributed to me gaining 1 kilo every year, and that's why I was around 10 kilos overweight. And of course, most men in their 50s think that's all muscle. So I was no different. I was sure it was just, I was bulking up. Just looked a bit chunkier. Definitely healthy. But I was completely wrong. And it was then that I started thinking about these sugar spikes, and there were some early studies coming along about why things like sugar spikes or fat peaks were important. Why did your response to food, rather than the food itself, be so important? And we did some studies here, but this is just to illustrate the point that if you think of each sugar spike or each fat peak, we're going to talk about fat peaks. 6 hours after eating, your fat levels, your triglyceride levels go up. And in most people, they drop quite quickly. It gets eliminated. But in some people, it hangs around. And fats that hang around in your system cause inflammation. So what we showed is that there was a link between these markers of inflammation and these spikes. So the analogy we have, it's a bit like you're having a low level of fire in your body all the time if you're having all these continuous spikes from snacks, etc., in your body. It's normal to have a glucose spike. It's normal to have a fat peak, but they don't last long and they go away quickly. If you have lots of them and they stay up a long time, you're going to get inflammation. And as I'm sure you know, inflammation is key to aging. It's key to most disease. It's key to cancers and many other things. So we want to reduce that. And I also found, as we were doing some more experiments, as one experiment with 10 other colleagues, ate these muffins made of sugar, lots of sugar, every 4 hours as the only thing to eat for 24 hours. And you can see my sugar peaks there. And I didn't realize until then how much food can affect your mental capacity. I was totally unable to concentrate and focus, and I lacked energy. I was trying to write a grant at the time. I couldn't. And it really struck me that unless people had pointed out that food can affect your mental health so much, and you do an experiment like this, you don't really realize it. And that really brought it home to me. So why have we got this all so wrong? Well, it's because we dumb down nutrition to calories, fats, carbohydrates, and protein. We think that's all there is. Very easy, put that on the pack, sort it out, everyone's healthy. But we, humans, and our food, and our microbes are complicated. Food has over 50,000 chemicals in it. Why do we reduce it to 3 groups? Nonsense. We are also full of huge amounts of chemical reactions and interactions. Again, tens of thousands, and we know that we have between 40 and 100 billion, that's 100 trillion microbes inside us that are all producing chemicals. And the microbiome is really key to where we've got this wrong, because it's like we've been unaware of a new organ in our bodies, a virtual organ that controls the effects of food on our body. And I think the best way to think of it is as a living pharmacy. It produces tens of thousands of chemicals. And yes, there are trillions of them. There are even more viruses, they're fungi, they're protists. But the key is they're chemical producers. They produce vitamins, they produce the B vitamins, they produce brain chemicals like GABA and serotonin, and they're the main driver of our immune system. So if you mess with it, or it's not perfect, your immune system will suffer. And that's in addition to just the digestive side of it. So hugely important, and a huge source of proteins that is our armory, if you like, to defend us against the world, that we need to maximize. And studies for the last 10 years have been very consistently showing that people with all kinds of diseases and conditions have subnormal gut microbes. And the analogy I have here is like a garden analogy, that if you're healthy, you'll be like the garden on the right with lots of different species of plants, really good soil, everything interacting. There's chemicals in the air leading to a huge ecosystem that's fantastic and vibrant. If you're lacking that, maybe because you've taken too many antibiotics, because you've had too much ultra-processed food, you've had a very sterile life, or you've just been unlucky with various diseases, you will end up with a garden that looks like a bit of a desert. So that is very easy for something else to take over, or nothing will grow. And so very few chemicals are coming out of that. And that's what someone with chronic inflammation will look like. So from this work, we worked out that the way to improve this was to maximize people with the best gut health. We're eating about 30 different types of plant a week. Okay, so the diversity of gut microbes is directly related to the diversity of plants you put into your body. For my book, The Diet Myth, I was doing lots of self-experiments, and I just finished doing the French cheese diet, which I was going to write a book on to say this is the way to lose weight and enjoy cheese. And it was fantastic on day one. I was eating unpasteurized French cheese, washed down with a little bit of red wine. And for 24 hours, this was fantastic. I never felt so good. Day two, novelty had started to wear off. And by day three, I didn't want to look at cheese again. So I abandoned that plan. And the next project in my plan was to do a McDonald's diet for 10 days. Only eating McDonald's to see how it affected my gut microbes and my mental health. But someone else came to mind to do this project because they were a student, they were hard up for money, they liked McDonald's, and they were also my son. So Thomas did this experiment, and all his friends were very jealous because I was going to pay for 10 days for all his food. And he was a little star in the university. They used to have a group following him into McDonald's, watch him eat his meals. And he thought this would be easy. You know, I love this stuff. After 4 days, he came back and he said, I don't feel very well. My skin seems to change color. I concentrate even less than normal, which says is quite a lot. I'm not sure I can continue. And of course, as a devoted father, I said, no way, you're going to continue. We have to write this up in the Sunday Times. And that's what we did do. And he did finish the 10 days, as promised. But the important thing is he lost 40% of his gut microbes in that time. He lost diversity. And still, 6 years later, he hasn't fully recovered to where he was. So ultra-processed food has this dramatic effect on the microbiome if you have it in large amounts and you don't have any fiber. And I think that was the lesson for me, and he keeps reminding me every time he wants money. So fast forward a bit to 2017. I was giving a talk like this and about my book, and two entrepreneurs were in the audience. Jonathan and George, who've been working in the internet business, one in property, the other in financial, but they wanted to do something good and meaningful with their lives now. And so they said, we'd like to form a company with you, Tim, based on the microbiome and personalized nutrition. Because there'd been some early reports of how you could predict people's sugar responses to foods. And I told them I'm not really interested unless you'll pay for science first. Not many companies do that. Mainly it's marketing in this area. You just get a lot of money on marketing and Facebook ads, and that's all you do. And a few doctors with nice pictures and in white coats and stethoscopes. So I said, it's going to cost millions to do this, and I thought I wouldn't see them again, but they came back 3 weeks later and said, we've raised 4 million, can we please start? So I said, well, I couldn't say no, so we started, and amazingly, we had this project underway very fast, and we did an initial project, which I'll tell you about, but this company has grown massively fast. We started in the US and then in the UK. We now selling over 4,000 kits a week at the moment, and we have over 130,000 customers. So we have the world's biggest database by far. And what we do is give everybody identical meals at the same time. So everybody is in this giant study whereby wherever they are in the world or what they're doing, they're all getting an identical meal. They're getting a continuous glucose monitor. They're getting a test to look at a dry blood spot of their triglycerides. And they're getting a microbiome test using the latest technology, metagenomes. And we're also recording all kinds of detail about their normal diets, their health situation, their sleep patterns, their exercise, etc., putting that together into an algorithm that tells us about how they respond to any food. And this has about 80% accuracy at the moment. Now, the big thing we found, the first most exciting thing when we got these results, we had no idea what we would find, right? But we knew we had to be big. So we had 1,000 people. Most nutrition studies are about 15 people. So this was huge. And it was the only one to show enough variety. And we showed that there was a 10-fold difference in how normal people respond to an identical food. So whether it's carbohydrates or fats, 10-fold difference. Nobody is average. I think that's really important to realize. So that was the outstanding point we took. So with that variation, we knew we could have something to predict. Without variation, you don't have the ability to then predict anything because everyone's the same. The other insight we had is when we looked at the twins in this study, because most of them were twins, we saw that identical twins actually weren't very similar for this response to food. So it wasn't genetic. Genetics was only a small part of this. And many identical twins, one would have a good response to fats, the other one a bad response to fats. So this is really fascinating for me, particularly as a geneticist, because I've been telling everyone the opposite for many years. We also found that glucose dips, not just the peaks, were important, and 1 in 3 women have an important glucose dip, and 1 in 4 men, 3 hours after, say, breakfast. And those people end up losing energy, having lower mood, and importantly, overeating in the rest of the day by about 20%. So you think that single fact tells you how rubbish calories are, because you're eating the identical calorie. 2 out of 3 women won't have that dip and will not overeat, and 1 in 3 women will, not knowingly, be eating the same food, have a very different response, and be overeating every single day of their lives because their hunger signals are driven. So this just shows you how important personalization is. We also worked out a new way of looking at microbes and how the microbiome was controlling this, and how we could identify good and bad microbes. So everyone has a ratio of good to bad, and this was really important in moving forward. And we were able to give people information about what the bugs were we wanted to boost and which ones we wanted to reduce. These are a few of the trials, but the unique model of this commercial product is that everybody consents to be in a research study. So we keep their data, we share it, and by having this huge database, we are able to inform people. So we've updated our results from the 1,000 initially to the most latest one and given people those new results. So their results are changing. Just as science changes, also individual results change. So this is, we have a number of studies here, but Predict3 is the commercial product that's also a research product. And in addition, what we want to do is to bring people into what we call the ZOE universe, or the ZOE-verse, by giving out free information to people. Not everyone can afford this product, which for a year costs about 700 euros. So we want to educate everyone to move people in this right direction, so in order to think about food differently. And we've done this with a podcast called the ZOE Science and Nutrition podcast that you can listen to from wherever you are in the world. And that is now the #1 health podcast in the UK and in the top 10 of all podcasts. I think it was number 30. It was top health one in the US as well last week. Has about 1.5 million listeners to it every month, which is great. It's all free. And also we're doing these community studies as well. So we've encouraged tens of thousands, 100,000 people to do things like intermittent fasting or to eat fermented foods and report on the app how they're feeling. And we think this idea of building a community of people trying to show what no government wants to fund, that food really is important and that everyone can do these things, I think is really good. And we've just finished a randomized controlled trial, which I'll tell you about, to prove the efficacy against standard advice, because that's the often common criticisms. Well, does this work? So we've been turning our science into a product, and so we do these home tests, we're collecting all this information, and and our algorithms are always improving, and then people get these scores on their food. So what we're doing is you get a score for each food that goes from 0 to 100. So Coca-Cola might be 2 out of 100, and spinach might be 90. But everyone will have a slightly different score depending on whether their age, their sugar levels, what the algorithm tells you. So you put those together and you can build up scores for the day or the week. And the idea is to keep above a certain level, say 70 or 80%, and most of your meals, if they're above that, are fine. And the idea is to add food. We don't exclude any food. So most diet processes are all about exclusion. We are about inclusion. And so it's adding things to it. What can you add to your meal to make it healthier? Whether it's nuts, it's seeds, it's throwing a few avocados, it's extra virgin olive oil. These are the things that are important. So we want people to increase diversity. We don't want people obsessed with removing things. And now we're starting retesting just this month, doing a microbiome retest, and we're going to start doing other home blood retests as well to show how people are doing. We haven't published it yet, but we have a randomized controlled trial of about 360 people where we followed them for 6 months with the program against the FDA advice. And we got clear advantages in weight loss and other parameters such as lipids over that time, and particularly energy and mood increases. So that's very exciting, and we think we can still do much better. This is really just version 1.1. And the key is we don't restrict calories at all. Calories, we don't mention them. And this is radically different to virtually every other nutritional advice we're seeing. That's because we believe calorie restriction has the opposite effect and makes your body shut down its metabolism and makes you hungrier. So it's all about food quality. These are my results, and they're not very good. So it means that if I eat a croissant, I will get a big sugar spike, and annoyingly, my wife eats the same croissant, she doesn't get it. But it's how I found out that orange juice was as bad for me as Coca-Cola, and how I changed my breakfast from muesli and low-fat milk and orange juice to high-fat, full-fat yogurt, nuts, seeds with the odd berry. And I felt so much better on it. My blood fat control isn't brilliant. But this means, it doesn't mean I avoid all fats. It just means I avoid bad fats. So any fats in highly processed meats, for example, keep that to a minimum. Make sure I'm having the higher quality fats, which for me is basically cheese and extra virgin olive oil. The thing that I do fairly well at is my microbiome scores are in the top 5%, which is a relief because I'd probably be dead by now if those microbes weren't keeping me going. And I'm always trying to build on those. And this is just the ratio of the good bugs I've got compared to the bad bugs. So we've replaced the traditional way of looking at this, which was called diversity, with this new score. And it's now based on 50 good bugs versus 50 bad bugs that all of us have. Difficulty of a lot of these scores is that everybody's individual. So all of you have a completely unique microbiome, so it's very hard to have a consistent score that is useful and practical and changes over time in a way that makes sense. We think we've got there now. I also had something that you might not want in your body called blastocystis. It's a parasite. And I think we think now about 25% of people in the UK have this parasite. I think some studies in Germany was about 30%. In the US, it's about 8%, and it's harder to find in women. And all our ancestors had it. So if you go to any developing country, it's 100%. And people would have eradicated a few years ago, but we've found with my colleagues in Trento, who do all this microbiome work with me, that if you have it, you're more likely to be thinner, have lower blood pressure, have better lipid profile, have less diabetes, and less internal visceral fat. So it is a significant help to have this. Whether it's a marker or it actually does something is still unclear, but the analogy I've got is we have these. If we think of our gut as a jungle, we have these predators here, and the blastocystis is like a predator. It's 10 times bigger than most microbes, and it can eat them. And we think it's eating the ones that produce lots of, that interfere with our fat metabolism. So it eats some of the fat-loving microbes. It feeds off those. So this is a whole new way of thinking about our gut, just like when they tried to eliminate wolves from Yellowstone Park in the US, everything went crazy because there were too many deer, they killed all the trees, and all the birds and everything else died off. Maybe that's what's happened to our guts because of antibiotics, ultra-processed foods, etc. So how do we improve this? So I've told you everything that's gone wrong. I've told you about eating 30 different plants, which includes nuts and seeds and herbs and spices. Eating the rainbow is something that we've heard about in the past. People haven't really linked that scientifically very well, but it's because of these polyphenols, these defense chemicals in plants that give grapes that tannin taste, that astringency on your tongue. You get it in extra virgin olive oil in large amounts. You get it in coffee. You get it in dark chocolate. You get it in nuts. And once you start to taste it in things, you can see it. It's in berries, and it's in dark-colored leafy lettuces, cabbages. And so the color is telling you this has got good stuff in it. And I think this is really important that we recognize these foods. And so there's a 1,000-fold difference between an iceberg lettuce and an Italian Rossololo. An iceberg lettuce is completely devoid of any nutrient value. It's all water, and it lasts for 4 weeks in your fridge. That's its only saving grace. But it has no nutrient value, and so it's really important that we start to pick the right foods to eat for our gut. What's different with ZOE is we're very much science-based, so we've published over 50 papers, most of them in top journals, and so far, of people who've done ZOE, 82% have had more energy, 83% reduced their hunger pangs, and I think this is the other thing about weight loss we're not really addressing, and what the new drugs are addressing. They're showing us so clearly that the only way you can get massive weight loss sustainably is by cutting off the appetite signals. So it's very much brain-led. And so by altering the food quality, you can, and the speed of eating and various other cultural things, you can do that. And people eating more fiber and moving away from these low-fat products are going to do that. So low-fat foods increase hunger, as do actually some high-protein, low-fiber diets. People will lose weight slowly, and we're not after big weight loss because that will cause a rebound. We're going to get more and more data. Lots of data we could discuss about how important sleep is as well. Sleep and exercise, how you slept the night before, affects what your appetite is the next day, and your food choices. You're more likely to, if you've had a bad night, you want to go for that high-carb breakfast. You know, your brain is driving you towards that. So these things are really interesting. And exercise, we're finding very individual about whether people perform better eating before or after a meal. I mean, running, for example, before on an empty stomach or a full stomach. And there's differences between males and females, but also within individuals. So, in summary, calorie counting fails. I think that's a really important message to get out there. Exercise doesn't lead to weight loss, and all the studies show that it does fail. It might help people once they've lost weight, but actually to initiate it, it's no better than tossing a coin. Everyone is unique, and I think we need to really respect that and get people thinking about how to listen to their bodies to see what's actually happening. And I think the future of foods is all about these apps which replace questionnaires. It's about new labels. It's about gut scores on foods, personalization, and particularly food quality. So the 5 tips I want you to remember: 30 plants a week, eat regular fermented foods, eat the rainbow, rest your gut with fasting, which we haven't discussed, but this is time-restricted eating, really important for the gut microbiome. It doesn't want to be woken up in the middle of the night with you eating a high-protein snack. It's busy tidying up your gut, clearing it up, okay? So leave it alone, give it the break, just like you'd want your sleep. And reduce ultra-processed foods. Not only are they chemically bad for your gut microbes, they increase your appetite. So the studies are very clear that they increase your appetite by about 25% eating the identical food that is made to look like food but isn't real food. So that is increasingly important. We should be slowly eliminating those from our diet, taxing them out of existence, and getting us to eat real food again. Of all the scientific papers I've done and presentations, this is the most popular. What do I eat in a day? Which is rather depressing in a way, but several million people are interested to see what I eat. But again, it's not about what I eat, because it may not be the same for you. I think that's important. And I just put in the fact that I've been doing an experiment with Gordon Laukjær, taking my biological age, and interestingly, just as COVID hit, I decided to do an experiment on low-dose metformin, and I did gain a few years of extra life. Did that happen? Or it could have been other factors. I might have improved my diet even more. Who knows? But it's interesting to experiment that way. And finally, if you want to learn more, do go to the podcast and tell other people about it. It's a great way to learn about this stuff for free. And you've got all other books. They're now in multiple languages. And I look forward to getting any questions in the last 5 minutes from you. Thank you very much.